my name is Elmira Strange and I'm life coach, psychologist and a course creator. And I've been developing my courses and I've been teaching psychology, counseling, coaching online for the last several years. So by now I have emails pretty much on daily basis from my students. And I know many of you are watching my YouTube channel, so thank you very much for learning with me online. I am grateful for this opportunity to reach out to so many of you around the world. I am pleased to say that by now I've been teaching around 80,000 students who completed their courses with me. And today we'll be discussing one of the emails that came from one of you, from my student. And these kind of emails I get quite often. So some of you I group, or I read one email during my questions and answers videos, but actually it usually is a repeated question by other students. Anyway, today we'll be discussing one of the questions that I have received a few days ago from my student. Her name is Aisha and she's asking me this. Aisha is finished a course on child psychology advanced level with me and is asking something related to child psychology and bonding with our caregivers that happen when we are small. Bonding is necessary for the stability and the security of a child. Just needed clarity on the following. What happens when a child's real parents die and they live or grow in an orphanage with an insufficient bonding? Can children bond well with other than the real parents? What happens to kids who are taken to daycares when months old? Do they get sufficient bonding? What are some of the signs and symptoms of children who have had insufficient bonding in their lives? Thank you so much for your question, Aisha, and I will try to address to my best ability and to my best knowledge. Well, first of all, orphanages luckily don't exist in certain countries, and the whole system is changing into more like what we call fostering care, where the child is adopted by a family, which would go through different tests and regulations to make sure that they're suitable before they're adopting the child. So the child actually gets more attention and care from their fostered parents than they would have in orphanages. Sadly, some orphanages still exist, and I know they exist in Russia and perhaps in other countries like I think India, Pakistan, and you can post in the comments below which other countries orphanages still exist. It is a sad reality, but we have to look at it objectively and what we can do to help, if not children when they grow up, or their parents or foster care parents, to make the transition and make their life for the better. So orphanage is a place where the baby or the child or a teenager would be placed when they don't have primary caregivers, when they don't have parents. And typically they would be placed in a situation where there will be lots of other children, and it could be 10, it could be 20. How many care support workers do we have in that place? Usually it's more than 1-to-1 ratio, and what I mean is usually it will be one caregiver and perhaps 5 or even more children, depending on the country. And I know some gruesome stories from Russia where it would be a couple of caregivers and like 30 children growing up in that orphanage. Do you think that bonding can actually happen there to those caregivers? Well, to some degree it can, because the children get attached to somebody who pay attention to them, who give them at least some kind of emotional support or some kind of care. And if you were in that orphanage, you would see that they actually follow their caregivers as much as they can, unless they become disengaged and they realize that they cannot get a consistent care from their caregivers who are the support workers in those orphanages. Also, you need to think that these care workers, they come and go. They have shift work. They're not always there. And even though some of them genuinely care and love those children who are in orphanage, at the same time, they physically cannot be there for them at all times, and they cannot stretch themselves onto all children because they have many tasks, including some admin tasks and cleaning and unless the child reaches a certain age, and usually it's about 16, they will be in that orphanage unless somebody adopts them. The older the child gets, I mean to the teenage years, the more they realize that they probably won't be adopted because people tend to adopt younger children. And that's the fact. As a result, the teenagers from orphanages can become avoidant in nature, that they cannot rely on somebody to appear in their lives who can give them love, attention and care. Can children bond well with other people other than their parents, Of course, they bond with people who are close to them. They get attached to people who show them some kind of support and care. What happens to children who are taken to daycares when they are months old? And this is what was happening. I remember in Russia when I was growing up, children babies could be taken into daycare when they are something like 3-4 months old, because the government was interested that parents were going to work, and they tried to provide that support system. You can say, quote, support system. As a result, a lot of babies and little children were placed in a daycare for the whole of the day. And I mean, it's like 8 to 10 hours, whilst parents are doing full-time job. So on one hand, you would think it kind of helps the parents to maintain the earning level and to take care of their children financially. But what about that bonding? What about that attachment? What about that insufficient care that these children receive as a result? That's something we need to think about. Again, the system changed in many countries, and even in Russia, I don't think you can actually place a child when they're only 3-4 months old. Although, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you know better because you're there. So what actually happens to children who didn't get enough bonding with their caregivers because they didn't have them? So from that point, you need to think not only about orphanages, but also about children who don't have parents for various reasons. So the parents might be actually physically there, but there might be addiction in the family where the parent mentally is not really present in the child's life. Or dad, for example, is always on business trips, so he's not in the house most of the time. So things like that can affect the child's mind when they're growing up, and especially when they're becoming teenagers and when they actually need that source of support. And if the parents cannot provide that support, then it can affect the child in the same way as when insufficient bonding happened, like Aisha said in the letter. These are the people who are growing up, who tend to develop all kinds of mental health issues, from anxiety and depression to more complex mental health issues such as bipolar disorder, personality disorders, and even schizophrenia if the person has genetic predisposition to that mental illness. All these can manifest easier if we are predisposed genetically to a certain illness. So genetics plus environment equals manifestation of some mental health issue. And if we think about it, in today's world, one of the primary mental health issues that we deal with is depression and anxiety. And how many children got insufficient care or insufficient bonding when they were growing up? That's something that can be addressed too. Because I do think that most people didn't get enough of sufficient care and support when they were growing up from their primary caregivers. So what can help us all if we all develop certain kind of mental health issues? And remember that we are all on a spectrum, and somebody develops anxiety to some degree and somebody has depressive episodes for most of the year. We are all on a continuum. But what can we do to help ourselves? This is why you are here. This is why you are learning about psychology and self-development. To help yourself, perhaps, and to help other people who have these kind of issues when they grow up. And at times, what we need to do, we need to seek some kind of professional help, whether it's a counseling, therapy, coaching, or therapeutic coaching, to help us to become clearer on what we want and where we want to be, learning how to challenge our own negative thinking and how we can change our emotional states. If you are spending some of your time learning about these things and practicing it on yourself, you are halfway there. So just on a final note, realize that it's not all doom and gloom if the child is growing up in orphanage or in a fostered family. The main thing is that how they would be able to cope with their own mental health challenges as they're growing up. Because some children, when they are growing up in these unfavorable conditions, can actually become stronger in the mindset about what they want to achieve, about that they want to improve their life and the way they think and connect to other people. So I hope you found it useful and interesting, and I would love to hear your comments about this topic, because I know there might be so many of you with your viewpoints, and we're all from different countries, so please do contribute to how you think about this issue. I'm looking forward to read your comments. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video.